Designing with biology. I'm going to tell a story. Now, what's photographed here are microalgae. And I'm going to tell you all about homologous recombination and engineering the lipid pathway, the chemical engineering and a heterotrophic fermentation process. We're going to talk about chemistry and synthesizing polyols as a precursor to polyurethanes. No. That's not the story that we're going to tell. Now, who hands up if you wanted to hear more science, just to be clear. Oh, really? I don't believe you guys. Now, the story that I'm going to tell, there's a hook, kind of bridging to yesterday in one of the insights. The hook is actually not microalgae. I'll flag the hook when we get to it, but let me tell you the story of Checkerspot, what we're set up to do, where we've come from, what it is that we are doing, and I'll really emphasize the hook. But with any good story, there has to be an antagonist, there has to be a protagonist, right? And I think as you hear this presentation, you might think that you know who the protagonist is, but I'm going to save the protagonist for the end, and I think many of you will be surprised at who that protagonist is. Or sorry, the antagonist. Antagonist. So why do we exist? We exist because the world needs new materials that are designed to perform better, but are also less toxic and safer for the environment. And if we think historically to the 20th century and the rise of the Industrial Revolution, I look at that period of time, the rise of petroleum, and I see a tremendous amount of ingenuity, a tremendous amount of impact globally, creating a quality of life that many of us participate in, that we enjoy, where we prosper. But of course, we've learned along the way that there are some real limitations. There are some real issues with what the Industrial Revolution has created and what we live with today in the 21st century. And that ought to be a catalyst for change. I see the 21st century as being defined by biology, and I see real potential, not hypothetical potential, actual potential where we can move past petroleum. When we think about the global economy, it runs on carbon. So much discussion at the World Economic Forum, COP26, about how we're seeing green electrons. We're seeing the transportation fleet gravitate to electric vehicles. But what happens when the primary product of the oil and gas industry, the fossil fuel industry, the $2.2 trillion market, what happens when the primary product goes away? What about all of the other products, all of the other materials that are derived from petroleum, all of the polymers that are ubiquitous today? What happens to those markets, to those things? Are prices likely to rise? Are we going to continue to source petroleum in the same way? We see a better source of oil. Our mission is to expand the palette of molecular building blocks to create performance materials. And I'm going to be really specific in a few minutes about what I mean by performance materials and some use cases. But performance materials that have the added benefit of being more sustainable relative to alternatives like petroleum, or even like commodity vegetable oils. Palm oil comes to mind. So what are we doing at Checkerspot? We've developed an innovation capability that's enabled by biotechnology. And we're creating performance materials based on biotechnology capabilities. And we are working with microalgae. We are working in a fermentation-based system. And this works at scale. What's photographed here is a commercial manufacturing facility. You can see some fermenters here that are over 600,000 liters in scale. This facility was designed to produce over 30 million gallons of oil from microalgae per year. I can just see from the reaction that a lot of you didn't know that this exists, didn't know that this technology is commercially viable. And that's at the heart of the story that we're trying to tell. We're trying to bring this to life in a relatable and an emotive way. The hook is coming soon. But let's pause and think about the reality that we see today. First, we see this tremendous tailwind around sustainability. We all know, even the executives at major petrochemical companies know where the world is going, where we have to go. This is an existential crisis. The climate crisis is threatening our very existence. We know this is coming. And we also know that in the last 20 years, there's just been this massive proliferation of consumer brands because the barrier to entry has been lower than it's ever been, enabled by digital technology. So you have this proliferation of consumer brands that are all trying to differentiate in the market. And really, there's only 3 ways that a brand can differentiate: the story they tell, the way that they design or build products, or the materials, the ingredients that they utilize. But the worst kept secret is that consumer brands are buying product from factories. They're buying from the same factories that use the same inputs provided by the commodity players, but putting a different brand label on it. We see a different path, an alternative. We've engineered, we've created what we call the Wing platform. And I'm going to be really specific in just a second in defining what the Wing platform is and how we do what we do. It rests on 4 functional areas. The cornerstone, what is most differentiated in what we're doing, is the biotechnology. We refer to it as a molecular foundry. And again, we're producing specific types of oils at high yield, high productivity, where we can engineer the exact type of chemistry of those oils. And the chemistry matters because in the second area, material science, how we assemble those building blocks, those oils with unique chemistry, translates to physical functional properties in products that allow us to get to better products, better use cases. The third part of our platform is fabrication or prototyping, where we can design, build, and test parts and products based upon the materials that we're innovating. And then fourth, we have consumer engagement. In a really focused way, we're engaging with consumers and bringing to life what's possible with the innovation platform, with these performance materials, to showcase, to animate, and hopefully along the way, to de-risk the adoption of these materials for players along the value chain. We've got a lot of traction that supports the hypothesis. But let's pause for a second and just compare biomanufacturing oil from microalgae relative to petroleum. And I'm not going to go through all of this slide. I just want to focus on one thing, which is the carbon improvement. A 2/3 reduction in carbon relative to petroleum. And this was done by an independent third party several years ago, before some additional technologies that are now commercially viable allow us, with conviction, with confidence, that we can improve this even more, where this process end-to-end has the potential to be a carbon sink. Think about that for a second. Consumer products that can pull carbon out of the atmosphere and sequester it. Maybe that gives us a shot at the climate crisis. Here's the hook. Our point of entry into the market is outdoor recreation. Quick show of hands, who did the backcountry ski touring on Tuesday? Okay, some of you may have seen the skis that I was riding, Wonder Alpine. You may have had a chance to demo the skis. There are 2 materials that we engineered in skis. One is urethane cast that replaces ABS plastic as the sidewall. The second is the core. And we've engineered a core that's a wood foam composite. Both of those materials, the cast and the core, are engineered for lightweighting, strength to weight. for damping or energy absorbing properties. And we discovered along the way that there's some really interesting adhesive properties with the cast urethane. Now, I started with some historical context, the 20th century and the rise of petroleum. The keys to our future lie in the past. We've taken inspiration, I know that might sound surprising, inspiration from the petrochemical industry. When you look at a material like carbon fiber, innovated back in the 80s, started off in applications like golf club shafts, tennis rackets, bicycle frames, with physical properties that would ultimately have utility in aerospace and automotive. Much larger, ostensibly more lucrative markets, but starting in discrete application sets where you could demonstrate a business model, where you could show a supply chain, where it's not just story, but sound business fundamentals. Sound business fundamentals, which I'm going to get to at the end of this talk. Now, when we launched our brand, Wonder Alpine, we knew we were onto something because we're comprised of a bunch of scientists that went a little nutty in all of the bench research, demonstrating relative to other incumbent materials, as well as just deriving the conviction that we were onto something that was differentiated. And then we built it into products and we put it into the hands of some enthusiasts, some mountain professionals, to really get their feedback, their insights about how it performed. But I'll be honest, we were all really anxious and nervous when we launched because how are consumers going to react? And this is a testament not only to the performance of the product and the awards that we've won, but also it reflects where the world's going. And the fact that other brands see what we're doing as being central, as being a solution to the climate crisis, to achieve their sustainability goals. Now, like carbon fiber, our point of entry into the market has been outdoor recreation. It's an emotive category. Some describe outdoor recreation as being the canary in the coal mine, at the forefront of the climate crisis. Kind of surprising, I'm from California. The West Coast is having an epic winter with an unbelievable amount of snowfall, but it's on the heels of a huge drought with unbelievably high temperatures. We've started in outdoor recreation. We're moving into adjacent categories like home and office furnishings, like construction materials, aerospace and automotive, where those physical properties of the materials are highly sought after. And along the way, as we continue to scale and grow, an already competitive cost structure continues to decrease. And as it decreases, it enables us to further build the business case, to demonstrate to our partners, to our customers, how they can make money. We're also, since raising our Series C financing, we've announced expanding into other categories like personal care and food and nutrition. Hands up if you knew that some of the food products that are on store shelves have ingredients that come from petroleum. Kind of shocking. A lot of people don't realize that. We're expanding into these other categories because we can utilize the same oils, but deployed in different ways where there are functional benefits for people. So our vision, it's a vision about empowerment. The market is so astonishingly large. The scope of the problem is so significant. One company, one startup can't possibly do all of this on our own. And so the business model is all about focusing on our core competency, focusing on innovation, focusing on continuing to develop new novel materials, solving problems for consumers, but where we enable, we empower third parties, customers, partners with the technology, either because we're supplying the materials or because we're licensing it. Even to the petrochemical industry. We have a range of partnerships, some announced, some that we haven't yet announced, where we're already seeing this take flight. So coming back to the promise to reveal who the antagonist is. Every great story, right, has to have a protagonist and an antagonist. My hypothesis is that when we look at the world, when we think about big, transformative, I hate the term, disruptive change, it's going to require a global community. I look at the petrochemical industry. I look at the ingenuity. I look at what we've built on from the 20th century. That's not the antagonist. Anybody guess who the antagonist is? Say it again. It was here. No. It's us. It's you. It's me. Put your hand up if you flew here. Put your hand up if you don't own an electric vehicle. Put your hand up if you own a waterproof, breathable garment. If you ski, if you snowboard. If you're an outdoor recreation enthusiast, you'd put your hand up. Put your hand up if you eat meat. Everybody's hand, did anybody's hand not go up? Because if so, I really want to meet you after. It's us. And there's so much discussion, there's so much virtue signaling, looking for the enemy. We need to look inward. We need to take accountability, take responsibility. It's you. It's me. That's the antagonist. But I'm filled with optimism because I know that this technology is real. I know that these solutions exist. And we're seeing the response from consumers. We're seeing the response from our brand partners, from those along the value chain. It's in flight. It's happening. Now, we are in a race against time. We need to do this as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, in addition to building the use case, we have to demonstrate the business model. We have to meet companies where they are. We have to demonstrate that this is a way to drive profitability, either through market share or through gross margin. If we have three things, performance benefits, the right price to drive unit economics, and a carbon sink, who in the world wouldn't adopt the technology? That's what we're working so hard at Checkerspot to bring to life. That's what we're asking for help with. That's what we're inviting the discussion that will follow this afternoon for advice and thoughts, because there are some roadblocks. But we know we can do it. I'm optimistic. And I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to share the story of Checkerspot, to see how we're bringing this to life. And I look forward to sharing the question in just a second. Thank you.